right. So essentially for the rest of the meeting, what we're going to be going over is, first I just want to kind of give you an update on VITA. And that's going to be, exactly how has the coronavirus impacted our VITA program? What are, Steve, Michelle, Maria, and I working on while the sites are closed? Just kind of really bringing you up to speed on what is happening in the world of VITA right now. After that, we also are going to have Jared Miller talk a little bit about the economic impact payments. Just exactly who's eligible for those payments, how much is it worth, how's the payment getting made, just essentially the rundown on the economic impact payments. And then finally, after he is done with that, we're going to then have Kevin Ressler join. And he is the new president and CEO of United Way. And he is essentially just going to be talking about what United Way has been doing during this crisis to help Lancaster County. So we will go ahead and get started with the VITA update. So first, I kind of just wanted to let you know, really, how has COVID-19 impacted our VITA program? So as you all know, essentially we had to, starting on March 13th, we had to close all of our sites. And when we first made that decision, it was a decision to suspend all operations for 2 weeks. We were, at the time, we were hoping to be able to reopen on March 28th. This resulted in about 1,600 canceled appointments. And as the next week or so went by, we started to see more things close. There was an order from the governor for non-essential businesses to close. And it became more and more apparent that we essentially needed to extend that closure indefinitely and just close until further notice. When we extended that closure to the end of tax season, we didn't get quite as many cancellations because essentially the appointments were never scheduled in the first place. After March 13th, we just said, with how uncertain the future is, we're not going to be scheduling any new appointments. But when we do get the chance to reopen, we are going to notify all of those clients. And by the way, I just want to confirm, we are hoping to be able to reopen. The IRS, they have extended the tax deadline. So, we have until July 15th to get, for people to file their taxes. So if things clear up here in the next couple of weeks or the next month or so, we definitely want to be able to reopen our doors, get the volunteers back in, get clients in, and start filing returns for Lancaster County residents who need the service. But we're only going to do that when and if it is safe to do so. So we'll stay in touch with you on exactly what form that's going to take, exactly what that's going to look like. And then also I want to let you know really what has happened, with our results, just for the sake of that way you know where we are. So going into the tax season, we had a goal of reaching 11,500 returns. And since we had to cut the season off back in the middle of March, we ultimately did not hit that goal, right? And even if, even when we're able to reopen, it's unlikely that we're going to hit the 11,500 mark. I think at this point, people are probably trying to file their taxes through other means, potentially going online, filing their taxes electronically. But I still think we should keep our heads held high. Essentially, for the entire year, we were at least 10% ahead of last year. And there's a number of reasons for that. We didn't have any snow days. We didn't have to cancel due to snow. TaxSlayer had a few outages, but not nearly as many as it had in prior years. So essentially, we just didn't have as many service interruptions as we did in other years. And also, we saw a very large jump in the amount of in-person tax returns prepared. So the program as a whole was 10% ahead of prior year, but when you look specifically at in-person appointments, the tax preparation that you are doing as volunteers, that actually was up by 25%. And that's really what was driving the growth this year. So, if we were able to, if the coronavirus didn't hit, if we were able to just keep going and keep preparing returns, I feel reasonably confident that we would have hit and we would have surpassed the 11,500 goal. I mean, really, the trend that we were on was set to be record breaking. So I think you all deserve a pat on the back. I know that I'm incredibly proud of what we were able to accomplish, and I think all of you should be as well. Really, we were doing very, very well. There's only so much you can do to prepare for a global pandemic. And I also think the IRS is going to be very understanding of this. I mean, this is not unique to Lancaster VITA. This is being felt by VITA programs essentially all across the country. VITA sites have had to close. They've had, interruptions in the service they're providing. This is not a problem unique to us. In fact, there are other VITA programs that have probably been hit even harder than we have. This is a problem that I think a lot of people are facing. But nonetheless, I do think you should keep your head held high because we were on track to have a very, very successful tax season. So ever since we've closed the sites, unfortunately, that does not mean that Steve, Michelle, Maria, and I get to go on vacation. We've still been working. And I just want to let you know a few of the things that we've kind of been working on, just so you know that, we're still invested in VITA and we're still doing what we can to make sure VITA is prepared, for next tax season and prepared for anything that is to come. So, we are putting together a reopen plan. I'd say that's one of the things that, we really have to work on at this point. And it's just really taking a look at, which sites can reopen, how are hours going to need to be adjusted, because a lot of our sites, they come from partner organizations. And they were expecting, April 15th, they were expecting that to be the end of tax season. What's it going to look like if we're going to come back after April 15th, to work around that, July 15th extended deadline. So we have to work out with partners exactly what that reopening is going to look like, what partners can allow us to continue to use the space, and if the schedule has to change. With all of those moving parts, I'd say at this point, there's still too much uncertainty ahead of us to really provide a date. But you can be sure that we will keep you posted on any developments there. If we start to see a time that is starting to look likely for us to be able to reopen, we'll make sure that and we'll make sure that you have all the details you need. So just kind of keep an eye out for emails from us, and we'll keep you posted on that front. On top of that, we've been trying to stay on top of the tax implications of COVID-19. So, kind of tied in with that reopen plan, we're trying to work around an extended tax deadline. What does that mean? And trying to just anticipate some things that are to come. And also involved in that is really knowing the CARES Act and the economic impact payments. This is something that people are going to have questions about. It's not something that happens every day. So people have a lot of questions about this, and we've been trying our best to really stay up to date on what the latest news about those economic impact payments are. That way, if people come to us for questions, we can get them the right answers. And we'll have Jared present on that to you guys in just a little bit here. And we've also been working on improving our website. Through this crisis, there is a lot of uncertainty. And what we really wanted to do is position ourselves to be a source of information for our clients. If somebody has a question about the extended tax deadline, if they want to know about the economic impact payment or tax time scams, we want them to be able to go to our website and, be provided with the information that they need. And we also worked on, getting TurboTax as an additional free file tool. And so right now with people staying at home and trying their best to not go anywhere, the fact remains that a lot of people are off of work. And if they're off of work, a lot of people, if they haven't filed already, they're going to try to do so they can get their refund, right? Because that could be what holds them over until they're able to get back to work. So we wanted to make sure that people were able to use our website to accomplish that. So I actually want to quick go to our website here just to kind of show you some of the changes that we have made. And let me see if I can get that to share. All right. So Steve, Michelle, or Maria, or is it showing my web page or is it still showing the PowerPoint?
Web page.
Web page. Great. So this is our website, and most of the changes that we've done are on the File Your Taxes page. So I just wanted to show you here, essentially when you start scrolling down, we are being very transparent that, our Vita sites are closed, but the filing deadline has been extended till July 15th. And then we also have listed here the free filing options. We've been using My Free Taxes for several years, but we also wanted to provide, let's go back here. We also wanted to provide TurboTax. There's essentially just a little bit of a different threshold here. My Free Taxes, it's your income can be as high as, your income does not matter. As no matter how high your income is, you can do it for free, but it's very limited on the types of income you can earn. TurboTax is kind of the exact opposite of that. They have a different AGI limit. You can only make less than $36,000, but they're a little bit more flexible with the type of income that you earn. So between these two options, we feel pretty comfortable that most of our clients will be able to have a free file option that suits them. And if neither of those work, we also have a link going to the IRS's free file page where there's just a couple more options listed. But we feel pretty comfortable that both of these should cover most clients' needs. We also have some information on the CARES Act, the economic impact payments that people are going to be receiving. And really the goal here is just to make sure that people have the information that they need, and we're trying to just position ourselves so that we can be that source of information. So even though we've had to close our sites, we want our clients to know that we do care about them. We do want to make sure that they have all the information that they need to get through this. And then finally, we do have a link leading them to just some information that they can have about tax time scams. It's an unfortunate reality that, when you're going to send out an economic impact payment like this, there are going to be people out there that try to take advantage of others. So just making sure that we give them the tools they need to be ready for that. If somebody comes, essentially comes to do harm, just making sure they have what they need to be prepared for those types of scams. It will be helpful. So that is what our website looks like. I just wanted to really give you a quick tour showing you what we have been doing to equip the community with the tools that they need. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. All right, and then just want to go over a little bit of some things that you can do to help. So one of the things that you can do to help is continue working on friends and family returns. Just because our sites are closed doesn't mean you can't use the software. If you have friends or if you have family that still needs their return done and they don't feel comfortable doing it online, you can access TaxSlayer from home. As long as you have a computer and internet connection, you can log on to TaxSlayer and you can prepare a return. And if it's friends and family, of course, that means that you don't need to get it quality reviewed. Essentially, all you need to do is when you're finished, let Steve, Michelle, or I know, and we'll be able to file that return for you. So that can be a really helpful way for us to still be making a difference in the county by filing the returns of those that we know, our friends and family. The other thing you can do is just go into TaxSlayer and just check your in-progress returns. Just look at the returns that you've done so far and just check, are they in the right status? Just go in, check your returns, and if there's anything you notice, like, hey, that's not quite right. Like maybe, I accidentally left this return as in progress, but it is ready to e-file. If you notice something like that, let Michelle or I know. And we'll be able to get that fixed and get that transmitted. So just check your queue of returns and let us know if any changes need to be made. The other thing is lead people to our website. They can use our links to file their return online, and by the way, that does get us credit. So that can kind of help us get maybe a little closer to the 11,500 goal. And also we have a lot of information there. if people are asking questions about the economic impact payments, if people are asking questions about, how to protect themselves from scams, or if they're asking, what's the tax deadline looking like, just lead them to our website. Just having people go there and take a look at what we have, they're more likely to think of Vita then in the future. So that can be another way that, we could really use your help. And finally, tell people about 211. We're the Vita program, right? And we do taxes, but people have more needs than just taxes. 211 might be able to help people in other ways. So if somebody's struggling, who knows? 211 might be able to give them a hand. So just really promote that as well, to just more holistically address people's needs. So that kind of concludes, our quick Vita update. I just wanted to really bring everyone up to speed, give you a few things that, that we're working on, and really just let you know how we've been impacted. So with that, I do want to open it up so that people can ask questions if you have any. So if you go ahead and use that raise hand feature, we will try to answer those questions. And there is the chat as well. So either one of those options, you can go ahead and we'll work on answering those questions for you. All right, I don't see any raised hands. I see that we have had one question in the chat. Give it a little bit here and then we'll keep on moving. All right, so we'll go ahead and keep moving then for now. The next thing that we're going to really talk about is the economic impact payments. And we're going to have Jared go ahead and take that over, since he does such a good job of our normal tax trainings. We figured we'd sucker him into coming in and teaching you guys a little bit more about this. So with that, Jared, go ahead and take it over.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Hopefully everyone is safe and secure at home. We did want to basically go over a couple of interesting items as they happen here with the new tax law changes, as Jesse mentioned. Even though things are quiet on the tax prep front, doesn't mean that we're actually not doing tax return work. And in fact, a lot of questions coming in this time of year about what's actually occurring. So as we mentioned, typically today would have been our last probably full day of trying to get returns out, as we're hitting the actual April 15 deadline. But a lot of things have changed. The extension automatically to July 15th will obviously be impacting filing. And that brings up a lot of questions, particularly related to the economic relief payments. People are saying, how am I going to be able to get my economic stimulus money if I didn't file my 2019 return? So the fortunate part is a lot of these areas within the economic stimulus are going to actually be relatively automatic. So we're going to be seeing a lot of these programs actually occurring all by themselves. And what the IRS is going to do is to go ahead and use information they already have in their system. So one of the things we're going to take a look at is, for anyone who's gone through the VITA program, they should generally qualify for the economic stimulus payment. So when we take a look at who's actually eligible, it's going to be based on a couple factors. And the first one, we take a look for opportunity for what would your adjusted gross income be. And when we take a look at these eligibility levels, for anyone who's been through the VITA program, they should all qualify under the income threshold. So we're looking at $75,000 per individual. So that's a single filer. We're looking at $112,500 for a head of household and $150,000 for married filing jointly. Now, this is to get the full amount. So if you have an AGI of less than that amount, you're obviously going to get the full payment, unless there's another factor that we'll talk about in just a minute. Now, not everyone's eligible. So there may be some individuals that probably aren't going through VITA. So some of you may have questions about, well, what happens to people who aren't in the income category? Well, if your income goes above a certain threshold, so if you're actually above the amounts at the bottom of the slide here, you will not be getting an economic stimulus payment. That is $99,000 for individuals, $136,500 for head of household, and $198,000 for married. And we'll go through a process to show you how that'll work. It's really kind of a calculation the IRS will use. And there's a little bit of opportunity here to figure out, particularly for those of you on the call who are in a situation where you say, well, what if my income is different between 2018 and 2019? And we'll actually give you a little bit of a strategy of how we can go ahead and work with that. So the first program we take a look at is really this whole process of, it's going to be based on AGI. One of the big questions that comes out, and a lot of confusion because we're getting a lot of information from a variety of sources of people who don't exactly know what is the economic stimulus money. People say, is it taxable to me? Is it taking away from next year's refund? What's going on? And really what we're looking at, this is an advanced funding of a credit that actually has yet to be basically instituted. It's going to be a 2020 credit, a credit on the 2020 return that they're actually funding today. So if you're eligible for the credit today, you'll get the full credit. If for some reason you're not eligible based on your information from 2019 or 2018, but you now qualify under 2020, you will have a second chance to get that credit when you file the 2020 returns in 2021. So we're really looking at an opportunity here for a new credit coming out that will be something to look forward to in the fall. So I now tell you about something new that's changed in the tax code for once, and that'll be a new program we'll be looking at here. So again, eligibility is going to be based on your income from either 18 or 19, depending on which is your most recent return filed. Again, if you don't have the qualifications this year, you might qualify next year. So we'll kind of talk about that a little bit. One of the main questions we have on top of this, in addition to who's actually going to be getting it, where's it coming from, is really that whole concept of who's not going to be getting this. And really what we're looking again is these individuals whose AGI are above those thresholds. So 99,000 for individuals, 136.5 for head of household, and 198 for married filing jointly. Couple other things that people may not be aware of. If you are claimed as a dependent on someone's return, the typical stimulus payment is going to be $1,200 per individual. So taxpayer and spouse, if you're filing jointly, would get $1,200. Dependents would get another $500. So what we're looking at here is, depending on where your dependency falls, it would be another $500 per individual. However, the dependency rules are going after the same rules we have for qualifying child for the child tax credit. It's children under the age of 16. So if you're over 16, so the ones that are no longer eligible for the child tax credit, they will not be able to either receive an economic impact payment on their own, nor will they be able to get one for their parent. So if you are claimed as a dependent on someone's return, so this is typically where we'll see children. This could include siblings. This could include older parents if you're taking care of them. If you're claimed as a dependent on a return, you will not be eligible to get their own payment. So that's going to be an important concept that we want to just address with people, is to say, well, why am I not getting one? Or I have a couple children on my return. Why am I not getting anything more? And the issue is that dependent themselves, if they're being claimed on someone else's return, will not get their own payment. Also, if they're age over 16, so they're 17 or older, they're still being claimed on their parents' return because they're a student or a college student, they will not be getting the $500, nor will they get the $1,200 on their own. So just one important concept we want to take a look at there for dependency. One of the other things we also want to take a look at is you have to have a valid Social Security number. A couple things we've talked about in the past few years here at VITA is that we have the ability to prepare returns for those that are actually having an ITIN, or a temporary identification number. We have also prepared returns for non-resident aliens. Now, unfortunately, that group of individuals is not eligible for this economic stimulus payment. They have to verify that they actually have a valid Social Security number. They're not claimed as dependent on someone's return, and their income is going to fall within those AGI limitations. And what we're looking at here is, so if you filed for 2019 or even 18, and you filed a 1040 NR, a 1040 NREZ, a 1040 PR, or a 1040 SS, they are not eligible forms to claim the credit. So those are just some things we want to point out. If you have anyone that you've worked with and they say, I didn't get one, why am I not getting one? And if it turns out they filed a 1040 NR because they're a non-resident alien, or they didn't have a valid Social Security number, that's the reason why they're not getting an automatic payment. So we just want to be sure we're clear on who's eligible and who's not eligible. And we're actually getting this information through a variety of sources. But as Jesse mentioned, there's actually a link not only on the Vita website, but also you can direct individuals to irs.gov. And one of their first banners is talking about the economic stimulus payment. And we'll talk about a couple other features about that as well. So one of the things that we just want to mention again, kind of the payment process, is going to be that the individuals themselves will get a $1,200 stimulus payment. That'll be the maximum amount that they get. If you file jointly, you can get up to $2,400. And the qualifying child, again, that meets the definition of qualifying child under the child credit rules, would get an additional $500. So a family of four, if you are filing jointly, your income's under $150,000 and you have two qualifying children, would actually get a stimulus payment of $3,400. Head household individuals, so they're going to be filing as just one individual. If they have a qualifying child, they would be getting a $1,700 payment. And again, this is not considered taxable income. It's really an advanced on a credit that we're going to be seeing for next year's returns. And what happens if we take a look and you're actually in between these levels? So if you're under the threshold, you'll get the full amount. If you're over the threshold, you get nothing for the current payment of time. And again, if you're over the threshold for 2019, that doesn't mean that your 2020 income may not be impacted. So we may see some individuals next year, and some questions we may need to ask for next year's preparation. How much of any of the economic stimulus payment did you receive in 2020? So a couple things we'll take a look at there. But if your income falls in between those ranges, so $75,000 to $99,000 for individuals, $112,500 to $136,500 for head of household, and $150 to $198 for married couples filing jointly, it's actually going to be reduced automatically for $5 for every $100 difference. And again, these are some very you can do the calculation by hand if you like, but the government's actually very good at doing these numbers and coming up with that phase out. So we're basically looking at a phase out over that income period. So one of the things we take a look at is how much AGI did they have for those years? And here's where I just want to give you a little bit of a technique, particularly for those that might be looking at your own AGI and saying, I'm not quite sure where we're going to be falling out. So some of the things we've taken a look at for clients in the past is to say, well, what was their 2018 AGI if they haven't filed for 19 yet? So obviously we have until July 15th to file 2019 returns. So the technique could be, let's take a look at your 2018 tax return and where's your AGI? Are you qualifying for the economic stimulus payment on the 2018 return? If so, you don't actually need to file your 2019 return to be qualifying. In fact, it may be beneficial for you not to file yet and wait until the July 15 deadline or until after you've received your economic payment. Because once you actually get that payment, it doesn't matter if you no longer qualify for it. Once they give you the payment, that's not going to be taxable income. There's no repayment of that credit, so you're going to be in good shape. The issue we run into is what happens if your 2019 AGI is now going to put you in a higher position? Well, if you've already filed, unfortunately, we can't really do too much about that. But if you haven't filed yet, the strategy may be let's wait until after the payment before you file your 2019 return, particularly if your AGI is going to be now reducing the amount of economic stimulus you may get. On the other hand, if your 2019 income will give you a full benefit and your 2018 was too high, the strategy may be let's go ahead and get that 2019 return prepared as quickly as possible and get that filed so the IRS will use your updated information for the credit calculation. So again, what we're going to take a look at is the IRS, once they have your information, one of the nice parts about filing electronically is they have all the data that they need to be able to calculate these things. So it'll give us the opportunity for them to go ahead and automatically prepare payments based on your AGI, either off your 18 return, if your 19 hasn't been filed, or if your 19 return has been filed, they'll be using that information. But again, if you're over that level, you won't be getting any credit. So one of the things you may have been hearing about on the news is that people actually have been getting their payments already. So we have seen a number of clients already getting their economic stimulus payment through direct deposit. That's going to be the easiest and fastest way to get your payment. So if we prepared a return that already had either a refund or actually they made a payment through a bank account, that information will automatically be used by the IRS. So they will try and send that deposit back to that same bank account that has been used in the past. So if we have not put direct deposit information in there, let's just say we have a return that we had prepared. Maybe the only reason we had prepared a return was just because the individual wanted to do their Pennsylvania property tax rent rebate, and we don't have the bank information in there. The IRS is going to actually mail a check to that individual. So if there's no direct deposit information, the IRS will mail a check. There is going to be an option on their website. The IRS mentioned mid-April. According to my calendar, we're kind of in the mid-April timeframe right now, but we're hopefully going to be seeing a new link on the IRS website that will allow individuals to check their payment. So there's a check payment feature that will be populating on the irs.gov website that'll actually allow individuals to go in, verify the amount of payment that they should be receiving, and actually update the IRS. They can actually go ahead and update their bank information. Particularly if you're using a little bit older information, maybe the IRS is using the 2018 return, you can actually update your bank account. If you had a change, if you want to go to a different account, you may log in and go ahead and change that information. Likewise, if there's a situation where someone may have moved, the IRS will allow you to change your address on that feature as well. So it's not quite available yet. We're hoping it should be coming out any moment here. But the other thing we just want to let you know is that the IRS will be sending a follow-up letter after that payment has been processed. So it's about a 15-day lag, and you should be getting a letter as confirmation that the payment has been applied to your account. If there were any problems, the IRS is going to give you a contact information of how to get a hold of the IRS. So they're going to give about a 2-week leeway to make sure the aspect will be covered in full. So basically what will happen, the IRS will send out the information, then confirm that you actually received it. A lot of people may not be double checking their bank account. Again, it's going to be automatically deposited into the last account that the IRS has. So kind of the word of wisdom to use for everyone, check your bank account. Go on, if you see a miscellaneous $2,400 deposit, don't be alarmed that the bank made a mistake. It's probably your money coming back to you here. So that's what we'd be expecting. Okay, and just a couple other things that we'd be taking a look at here is for the opportunities when money comes around from the government, it's always a prime time for people to come in and try and scam our clients on getting those funds. So as a reminder, the IRS will never call. They're never going to give you a text message. They're not going to email. All the correspondence from the IRS is going to be done by mail. So just bear in mind, if you have friends, if you have neighbors, if you have someone said, hey, I got a great text from the IRS saying that I'm eligible for the stimulus payment. All I have to do is just text them back to this number, confirming my bank account and social security number. That's not a valid request. That's going to be a scam. So everything the IRS is going to be doing is generally automatic. There's really not much our clients need to do. We will talk a little bit about if they haven't filed a return. And one of the reasons we always like to have everyone file a return when they come in is to make sure that IRS has that information. So we always kind of joke about the beginning when we start talking about who should file a return, and our response is everybody, right? So if we file a federal return, even if it doesn't need to be filed, the IRS already has record. So usually within VITA, we've always been filing the federal and state, even if the IRS has not required the federal. So again, what we're looking at here is they're going to base it off either the 19 or 18 information. So 19 if it's filed already. If 19 hasn't been filed, they're going to default back to the 2018 return. We have some individuals who may not have filed Social Security recipients, may not have filed a return because they know they're underneath the threshold. Maybe in the past, they've only ever just filed for the PA property tax rent rebate. Fortunately, those individuals, if they've never filed a federal return, don't need to do so now. As long as they are not claiming a dependent. So the IRS is going to base it off their filing status, single or married filing jointly. But the only reason you need to file is if now you're claiming a dependent and you would like that additional $500 if the dependent qualifies for the under 17. So if you're just collecting Social Security, the IRS is going to use the SSA 1099 or the Railroad Retirement Benefit Form to calculate the payment for you. If you have not filed, and you probably should be filing, or you're getting some other type of benefit, whether it's some sort of disability, we highly suggest filing a 2019 return as quickly as possible. So particularly if you reach out to your contacts and they say, I'm not quite sure what to do, as Jesse mentioned, we can still file returns. So certainly not a problem to use the TaxSlayer program to go ahead and do a 2019 return for individuals. The process is going very, very fast. I had worked with a couple people last night, and by the end of the time, the returns were already accepted by the IRS. So the process is moving through fairly quickly here. So if you have individuals who have not filed, and we may actually see some people coming out to say, I haven't filed in a couple years, this is a great opportunity to get caught up. So file a 19 return as quickly as possible. And again, you can do it either through TaxSlayer or direct people to the free tax prep Lancaster.org. Some people may be afraid about these payments. So they may say, well, I don't want to really file. I'm concerned because I owe the government back taxes, or there may be some other things. The government will not withhold these amounts. So what's different from other refunds, if you owe money to the government and you file a federal return, the government will keep those funds. The government will not keep these payments. They're economic stimulus. So even if you owe back taxes, they will still be getting the economic stimulus check. From our understanding, the only thing that they're going to be withholding payments for is for unpaid child support. That's the only area that we're seeing here where the government may be withholding some of these payments back for individuals. So even if you're on a payment plan, even if you have an installment agreement with the IRS, they will actually give you the economic stimulus outright. So a lot of reasons to go ahead and file here if you haven't done so already. For most individuals, for most people that have already gone through the system, really nothing we need to do. And fortunately for a lot of our VITA clients, as long as they have bank information in there, they hopefully either already have gotten or will shortly receive their economic stimulus payment. And again, probably the best source for information, as we mentioned, this is being updated hopefully on a more continuous basis, is the irs.gov. And there is an economic stimulus area there. At some point, we should be getting our process, and Jesse has it up on screen here, where you're going to see on the lower right-hand side, you see the Get My Payment coming mid-April. Again, most of us would kind of consider April 14 kind of mid-April, but according to the government, we're not quite there yet. So we should be seeing this coming up in the next couple of days. This is a button you can actually check on to see what the government has, the AGI that they're working off of to process your payment. You can actually confirm if you have not given bank information before, you can actually do that now and change it to direct deposit. Or if you need to update information like an address so they can actually send a check to you. That'll really kind of speed up the entire process and really to get the money back in the hands of individuals as quickly as possible. All right, and I think where we're at this point is we can open it up for questions if anyone would like to ask anything about here who are filing.
Yeah, so feel free to ask questions in the chat. You can also click on participants and you can raise your hand if you want to actually ask a question out loud. So either of those options are perfectly fine.
So, Jared, one of the questions we have in the chat is what about people who filed married but filed married filing separate? How does that impact their economic stimulus check?
Yeah, so that one's going to be an interesting area. And we do run into this question as well with people who have filed jointly and they're no longer jointly together. The government is going to send it to, and I'll kind of apologize for that question. I'm going to answer in reverse order. So the government is going to send a check if you have a married filing jointly situation. They're going to go ahead and send it the whole $2,400 to whatever bank account they have on file. So unfortunately, we may have some clients that are maybe going through a divorce or separation process. They're going to have to figure out how to split that bank account themselves. So one little wrinkle we have here is for people who have filed jointly before and they're not filing jointly now, we may run into some problems there. From a married filing separately perspective, those are effectively going to be considered separate returns. So those would actually be taking a look at the thresholds and determining whether or not they would qualify under those scenarios. So a married filing separately, you're actually going ahead and not filing jointly, so you would not be under the AGI threshold, and each one should be processed, from my understanding, on their own.
So Jared, another question I've had from clients who have called in, if they gave birth to a child during tax year 2020, will they be able to claim that child when they do their tax return for 2020 and then get an additional $500 credit at that.
That's correct, right. So the IRS is basing this off the information from prior returns. So the IRS has no idea whether or not you actually had given birth in the last 3.5 months to a child, or who's going to be claiming the child or anything else, because they don't really have that information on the returns. As we mentioned, this is actually an advance of a credit that's coming out for next year's return. So great question, Michelle. So if you have changes in your circumstances, let's just say you have additional children, or maybe your AGI has changed and for 18 and 19 you weren't going to qualify, or maybe you didn't fully qualify, but you will in 2020, we have another bite at the apple. So when we actually file the 2020 returns, and again, this will be looking at spring of 2021, you can go back and do the calculation. So if you have an additional dependent, that can be added another $500. If your AGI is changed and you're now underneath the thresholds, or it changed and you're not in a phase out situation, you can get that additional money back. So this is kind of an advanced portion of it, but in the next 9 months, we'll see people filing again with that information.
Perfect. Another question that I've had. So if you have a child that is a college student but has graduated in year 2020, and they for tax year 2020 are filing single, no longer as a dependent, they also be able to claim the credit on their tax return in 2020.
That is correct, right. So basically, again, what we're looking at, this is really an advanced refund for next year. So a situation where you may have a client who has been claiming a child for 19 and 18, so they've been a dependent. The individual will not be getting a benefit for that child because they're over 17. The child can't take the credit because they're not eligible as filing on their own. If they file in 2020 and are not claimed as dependent on their parents' return, if they're filing on their own, they would be then eligible for that $1,200 stimulus payment once they file the 2020 return.
Okay, another question we have in the chat here is you talked about child support.
Yes.
If my credit was $1,200, but I owed $1,000 in child support, will I just see $200 coming back to me, and will I have a reconciliation so that I know my child support's been paid off?
Right. So the intention that we're seeing here is the government wants to get as much money out. However, the carve out was the one thing they're going to take out for is child support. So the understanding, and we haven't seen these yet because they haven't really come out, is that IRS letter that's supposed to come out about 15 days after the refund's been processed should be indicating how much money you were entitled to get and how much money you actually received. So our understanding is that that letter should say you were entitled to a $1,200 stimulus payment. Out of that amount, $900 was reserved for past child support. Your net amount of $300 was processed to the following bank account. So that's our understanding. We haven't seen it yet, but that's what we believe should be happening.
Okay, here's another one. I've heard from a few retirees who feel that since their income is unchanged, they shouldn't qualify, and they want to return their stimulus check. Okay. Is there a method to do this, or should they just donate that money?
At this point, we do not have an ability to kind of pass on taking the stimulus. So what we probably suggest is to donate, and we could probably get Jesse to pop up the United Way donation button at some point here. But certainly there are a lot of charities that would be very, very willing to take on these monies if you'd like to donate it. The interesting part too, and we'll be talking about this again. You know, I kind of joked this year I didn't have a whole lot to talk about because nothing changed. I can't joke about that for next year. We're going to see a lot of changes. One thing the CARES Act has done has given the opportunity for people to write off some charitable donations. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to next tax season. But the benefit is we've seen a lot more of this standard deduction. We've gotten away from the itemized deduction because people just haven't had enough to get over that hurdle. But now the CARES Act has allowed some charitable donation on top of standard deduction. So it may be an opportunity for people who are still charitably minded to still give money. And we do want people to track any of those donations. So that just kind of brought up another quick aside there, Michelle, on some of the changes in tax law out of CARES Act. But if you want to donate it, you actually can get a charitable deduction even if you're going to do the standard deduction next year.
Thank you. So here's the final question I'm seeing right now. It
Mhm.
says, how will this advance of a 2020 tax credit affect the way taxes will be filed next year?
Mhm.
And I believe they're looking at the impact on other credits. So will
Sure.
this stimulus check count as income and potentially make them not eligible for an earned income tax credit or something like that?
Right. So, and the interesting part, they've truly put the cart in front of the horse here, because they haven't designed the credit yet entirely. They just wanted to try and get some information out to get some stimulus. What we're looking at here is that this is we've actually seen this before. For those of you who've been preparing tax returns, the last time we've seen this was actually 2008, when we had an economic stimulus package that happened in the middle of that year. Took a little bit longer to get information out to individuals, get the refunds out, but it's a similar concept. It's actually an advanced refund of a future credit. So the interesting part, if you qualify today and all of a sudden your circumstances change and you don't qualify for 2020, you do not need to repay this amount back. It's also not considered taxable income, so it should not be impacting AGI or other credit opportunities for those that have taken earned income credit or been eligible for, say, the retirement savers credit or a couple other options there. It should not be impacting AGI and should not impact ability for other credits. And most importantly, should not be going ahead and kind of impacting next year's refund. So it's not as if we're getting next year's refund paid to you early. This is going to be a brand new credit we're going to see on that return.
Okay, I just saw another question come up. It says, does the charitable adjustment include non-cash donations as well as cash made in 2020? And do we know what the limits will be?
Sure. So the CARES Act has actually detailed a couple of these items already. And unfortunately, I don't have the material right in front of me to be able to answer those questions. But we can certainly post some additional information about those. My understanding is that we are looking at cash donations. I will double check and see whether a non-cash can qualify. It's basically looking at a threshold, I believe, off the top of my head, and I apologize because I've got a number of new programs working around here, but I believe it might be $600 per individual that we'd be looking at here for a charitable contribution on top of the standard deduction. But that information is in the CARES Act, and we can brief you on what that would look like as well.
Okay, one other question that I had from a client on the phone.
Yeah.
If they file a married filing joint return,
Mhm.
one spouse is collecting Social Security, the other one is not.
Yes.
Will they receive the $2,400 based on their joint tax return? And will they also, for the spouse collecting Social Security, will that spouse receive a separate $1,200? And if
No.
the answer is
Yep.
yes, they will not.
That's correct. So they'll only get one stimulus for everyone. So what we're looking at here is that every individual can only get up to $1,200. So the process that they're looking at, and I think that where a lot of confusion comes in, is the IRS says, if you haven't filed a return, we can use your Social Security information to calculate what that is. They don't know exactly what your filing status is, so they're going to revert back to the individual component. And if you haven't filed a return, they're going to assume that all your other income's under $75,000. But if you filed a return jointly, your Social Security number is now attached to that return. So the government's not going to go under the Social Security mechanism. That's their fallback. They're going to take a look at their tax return database. And if your Social Security number is in the tax return database, they're going to use that process first. So if you're filing a joint return with your spouse, you're not going under the Social Security portion. You're going to be going under the IRS's tax database and figuring out your AGI. So once you qualify under one program, they're not going to allow it to be opened back up and you get a second $1,200 payment.
Thank you. Okay, another question that's here. It says,
And this just to chime in real quick, this will probably be our last question so we can move on to the next piece then.
All right. So is the stimulus a refundable credit on the 2020 tax return, or do we not know that yet?
We're not entirely sure that yet. I'm presuming because of the nature that we have here, it probably will be a refundable credit based on how the payments are happening currently. Again, what we're looking at is really the people that probably will be getting that credit in 2020 on their 2020 return when we file in 2021 are kind of individuals that have the following circumstances. One, like Michelle mentioned, they were dependent on a parent's return in 19 or 18. couldn't file on their own. Now they're eligible in a 2020 return. Perhaps their income based on kind of the economic circumstances today have dropped considerably. So now their AGI is underneath the threshold to phase out or to get them to qualify. Or potentially we have people who are non-resident aliens who have now actually been able to secure a social security number or proper filing methods. So they will be the ones that will be seeing a lot more in 2021 as we prepare the 2020 returns, who might be getting a second chance at that credit. My understanding is it should be a refundable credit based on the nature of what we're seeing so far. Kind of a lot of questions in the area still as to exactly how that's going to look. We have a couple things to get through before we get to that port, including a fairly big election here in November. If that happens, determine what moves on from here.
Are we moving on, Jesse, or do you have time for one more question?
I think we probably have time for one more.
Okay. Is there a cap on the total payments per CARES Act? If so, is it possible that later the payments will be reduced or eliminated?
Right. So from our understanding, there's no cap on the CARES payment. So this economic stimulus is not like some of the other programs you may have heard about where there may be a loan program that's already run out of money here in PA. The government's basically going to be giving these out. It's going to be processed in a certain order that we're not entirely sure what order the IRS is going in. We know some people have gotten their stimulus payments already. Some people have not, but they're going to be processing through based on their own criteria. So it's not as if the government's going to run out of money in this program. They will continue to give out in full any monies that people are eligible for. So if you're going to be eligible for a $1,200 rebate, you're going to get that $1,200 rebate, whether it happened already or whether it may happen the next month or so as they're processing through information.
All right. Well, thank you, Jared, for your time. We really appreciate it. Hearing you talk about the economic impact payments is certainly helpful. This is, it's been a hot topic recently. So thank you for taking some time and explaining that to us and just letting us know how exactly that's going to work.
Sure. Absolutely.
All right. So the only thing that we have left at this point is we are going to talk a little bit about, what exactly United Way is doing at this point, what they're doing to help through this crisis. So we actually have Kevin Ressler here as well. He is the new president and CEO of United Way. And I don't want to do too much of an introduction for him. I'll let him take that part himself. But I do at least want to say that he, in the past, has been a Vita client. So, if anybody understands the value of Vita, it is certainly Kevin. So with that said, Kevin, go ahead, take it away. You should be able to unmute yourself because I have you as a co-host.
Yep, thank you.
Know what United Way is doing.
All right. So yeah, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you all to the work that you normally do in spite of these challenges. The Vita program is extremely important. It's one of the reasons that I chose to accept the job offer, bluntly. So yeah, my own self, number of years ago, I was doing AmeriCorps Vista, and I used the Vita program. The following year, I was in seminary, graduate school, and was working in food service, very low income, and was able to use the Vita service then as well. Before then, I had mostly, I'm seeing a big ups to AmeriCorps over there, absolutely. And I had also done Mennonite voluntary service in San Francisco, which at the time, the program I worked with, we encouraged people to use similar types of programs out in San Francisco. So I had previously done, when I was like 18, my dad was like, and now you do your taxes on your own with TurboTax. So, I had done that and just didn't know if I was doing everything right or not, and I didn't have my dad looking over my shoulder anymore. So it gave me a lot of comfort and confidence. And then as I got married, everything I had known for tax filing, I didn't know if that changed or how that changed. And having individuals providing confidence was extremely valuable. So thank you for what you do. I'll also say that, as many know, the United Way over the last couple of years has seen some declines in our fundraising. And one of the newspaper reporters recently came to do a story. It ended up not running because it was about a week before the stay-at-home order. But he really was trying to push us on, from a perspective, from sort of a dour and a perspective, a pessimistic one about, well, the campaign down again. And I said, you know what? Here's what I want credit for. I said, you're looking at a 5-year trend line, which, yes, our donations have gone down over 5 years. But you know what else has gone up? Is the amount of money that we have saved the community in Lancaster through tax prep. And I said, so 5 years ago, it was about $1.2 million. And this past year, the previous year, was $3 million. And so I said, the United Way, and through our partner, programs and agencies, does a lot of things. But the VITA program is United Way, and United Way is VITA. And we should be getting credit for what has often been called the greatest anti-poverty device, which is putting dollars in someone's pocket. And so, while we may not be giving that out to agencies as grants, we should also, as an organization, get credit for the $3 million that we put into Lancastrians' pockets last year that didn't go to just the service fees, not even talking about the $14 million in returns, in which, as I pointed out, for many individuals who otherwise do their own taxes, they may be missing out on some of those. So that $14 million, we can't figure out, if it would be 13 million or 12 million, if everybody doesn't get all of the various, things that they are allowed and awarded through the tax code. So I just wanted to say that that's a really important service that you all do, and I wanted to thank you all for that. So what else is the United Way doing? Again, as I just said, it is very important for me, for you all to know that I see no difference, no bifurcation between VITA and United Way. We are together, we are one, and we do the work that we each do, maybe different hands or different appendages, to use sort of a biblical reference, but that we're all working towards the same goals of empowering individuals and transforming their lives so that they're able to be more self-sustaining and able to better provide for themselves, their future, and their families. We also do that similarly with the 2-on-1 program, same thing. It is a United Way program. We are all one staff. Our paychecks all come from the same place. And there has been in the past some feelings or perceptions that they're different entities. And the reality is we are the same, and we want to see ourselves as a unified front that supports one another. So the United Way on the fundraising side, sort of that middle stool there. What is classic United Way, of course, is that fundraising and distribution. We have 75 directly funded partners, which that is leveraged into 300 community partnerships and various entities working together. We continue to work with them to fund them. Those who work in childcare or other things, we're asking, hey, is there money you're not using right now because you're shut down or whatever? Can we repurpose that to other areas where there's new needs? And so we're being flexible in our community impact process there to try to make sure that whatever the resources we have are distributed in the most effective and efficient way to impact the direct and immediate needs. The second thing that then is, how do we bring in more resources? So we continue to have our traditional conversations with corporate gifts and donors, and some of our larger donors in particular, some of our Tocqueville donors, which are donors who are over $10,000. We just had one of our donors, who's normally a $25,000 a year donor, just commit to $50,000 a year. And in conversation with him, he said, look, I know you're doing emergency funding. I want you to take this money and use this for staffing and operations and those things, because we need to make sure that the health of the organization long-term is there, not just the immediate action. So we also then are partnered with the Lancaster County Community Foundation, which, if you're still seeing the slide, is the slide there, the Lancaster Cares Fund. This is a fund, Sam Bressi, who's their CEO, and I had a conversation about what can we do and how does it be the most effective from a fundraising standpoint. And so we decided that it was important for us to have a fully co-branded fundraising campaign. We launched it March 17th or something like that. That was a couple weeks ago. And they seeded $250,000. We knew that a third initially was going to go to Central Penn Food Bank. Food was the first thing we thought of. Housing was the second. So shelter. So a third went to the Lancaster, the Lanco My Home, which used to be the Coalition to End Homelessness, and then the final third was going to go to United Way, which actually was initially increased right away. That third is for emerging needs. So some of those may be food, some of those may be shelter, or they may be completely unknown things. We're right now in conversations with, I think, 17 applicants. This is the first week for applications. Those grants are from $1,000 to $10,000 to nonprofits. One of the conversations, for instance, that we're doing, yeah, thank you. So we're at $727,000 right now, almost $728,000 really. And so we set a goal of $1 million. Once we hit that goal, we'll see if we need to set it higher or if we move to a phase 2. One of my favorite things that we had come up so far was the same day that the governor said that school was shut for the rest of the school year, we immediately had someone reach out and say, can we apply for a grant? How do we make sure that there's summer programs, summer schools? That's what we're looking at. And then another group, the NAACP, reached out to us and said, we'd like to partner to make sure that we can get devices in the hands of kids, not just in the urban areas and school district of Lancaster, but we also know there's connectivity problems down in Quarryville and the southern end. And since then, we've talked to a organization that funds environmental Chesapeake Bay stuff, and they immediately said we want to get devices in the hands of kids. So these conversations are continuous. I'm regularly in conversations with city and county leaders, even some state leaders, just about what the landscape looks like and how we can support. We've been advocating for funding for Vita and 211 in particular, and so we're looking forward to seeing how those things work. The other thing that I'll mention is that with the United Way, we continue to do our traditional fundraising. So this is great, this Lancaster Cares Fund. One of the things that is our commitment is that we're not taking a penny out of it for admin. The county foundation isn't taking any fees with the platform, and they're covering the credit card donations. So 100% goes to individuals. Of course, part of my job is running an organization, and you can't run an organization for free. So we still, of course, work at the other elements of grant writing and fundraising that we're doing, and seeing corporate gifts and those things come in, and making sure that we're not only funding the immediate needs for today, but that we're thinking about how do we fund and support nonprofits going down the road. So we're partnering with the Chamber and the County Foundation to co-host some webinars on how nonprofits should be thinking about what to do next, and just constantly trying to think, okay, so like what I keep saying is the goal is that you have to plan for every possibility, but the reality is you can only prepare for one possibility at a time. But if something happens, we don't want to be caught off guard or surprised, or when the next thing comes about, we want to already be sort of ready for that as a conversation. So this Lancaster Cares Fund is the main push that we're doing right now, although we continue to have our own emergency fund for our regular partners. And we continue to do direct fundraising, because this is a pool of money that goes out by grants that we don't really have the same level of control. So we still appreciate donations directly to the United Way, so that we can continue to support the VITA program and the 211 program, which is incredibly important right now for people who've never needed help before to know where to go. As you all know, from a scheduling standpoint for VITA, it has a strong benefit. And so just wanted to give that a little bit of an overview. Again, a really significant thank you for all of you. You're supposed to be done tomorrow, I believe. And here you are finding out what opportunities there might be to volunteer next week and the week after and in the coming months. So I do have a few minutes if there's any questions. Be glad to field 1 or 2 or 3 or 10.
Any questions for Kevin?
At this point, there's nothing on the chat.
Correct. All right.
I don't know, Kevin. You might have just done such a good job the first time around.
Oh, I think I talked too fast. No one picked up what I said. Well, thank you. I do, again, I appreciate it. I have a deep personal appreciation for the VITA program and what it does, and each of you. And thank you for taking the time here this morning. So with that, unless Jesse, you needed me to cover anything else, I think I'm good.
I don't believe so. Thank you for covering what you did. We appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, so that wraps up what we have prepared for this morning. So I hope that you all learned something. I hope at the very least this was a good distraction from from what day-to-day life is now. So one thing I also just want to quick throw out is that I said at the beginning this Zoom call process is fairly new to us. One thing I want to put out there is if you have any suggestions or if you have any feedback, feel free to just send me an email. Let me know what you thought of this. Let me know how it worked, because I am interested in finding out, how did people take this? Was it something that worked well, or does it need some serious work in the future? So with that, I'll go ahead and end the meeting. But it was really nice getting being able to bring everybody together today, and kind of just meet on this last day before what is normally the end of tax season. So it was good to reach out and get to talk with all of you.